Hello, everyone. This is the Revolutionary Think Tank podcast. If this is your first time here, this is a podcast about political commentary, a sprinkling of philosophy, organizing psychology, and revolutionary thinking. My name is Farias, and this is my co-host, Myster E. So, Myster E, how are you going today?
I am very well, Farias. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. And I thought this would be a very interesting topic. So, this could just be me and the fact that I don't know. Maybe I've been watching a little bit more sport lately. I guess middle of 2026, it's going to be the World Cup, so it's like kind of been a little bit more on my radar. But it's just whenever you're on social media, like something happens. Like obviously, a lot of things have happened in 2025 leading into 2026, and uh, inevitably something happens where whether it's a political statement and that sort of thing, and you inevitably kind of have that blowback where somebody's like, "Oh, you're being political, man. Why did you be political and bring it in? We were all just having fun."
Hmm.
And I guess I wanted to sit there, like I kind of sat there and I was like, I wonder what that person even thinks what the word political is.
Yeah.
And then I guess I did a whole tangent within my brain of like, okay, what is political? Maybe there's a really good podcast episode out of this that we could
Hmm.
definitely discuss because uh, I think it's not as straightforward or as common sense as people think it is, and I thought it would be a good topic to discuss today.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Um, Having said that, I thought I'd ask our trusty AI assistant for a definition, and then maybe I can go into possible personas who would think in that sort of way that I was describing.
Okay.
So let's start with a definition. What it's described as a core definition is being political generally means actively engaging with or expressing views about power, governance, and societal decision making. It involves participating in or influencing processes that determine how resources, rights, and responsibilities are distributed within the community or society. The key dimensions are engaging with public structures, so supporting or opposing policies, laws, or leaders, expression of ideology, so sharing opinions or societal, economic, or cultural issues tied to the government, or action and participation, whether voting, protesting, lobbying, or even discussing political topics publicly. Um, what was interesting was it also provided a broader definition.
Hmm.
So the broader interpretation was some argue that everything is political because nearly all decisions, what you buy, how you speak, what you support, reflect values and power dynamics. Others take a narrower view, being political only applies when you intentionally engage in political discourse or action.
Hmm.
So I found it interesting that it brought in the broader definition. So, okay, just throwing it out there, Mr. E, what do you think being political is?
Hmm. Well, as the broad definition that you provided there really does paint the picture of being political is kind of up to whoever you're speaking to, really. I think a lot
Mm,
of people will argue the fact that a discussion or pointing out an issue with encroaching on someone's rights or some type of change to a societal norm or a cultural standard, and
mm,
you critiquing that or saying it should be upheld or it should be taken away or it should be thought about, reimagined, re-envisaged, that's political for some people. And then,
mm,
talking about the state of affairs of governance in your country and this policy decision, whether we should tax at this rate, whether we should give people welfare or not. Like those things are all broad rangely considered like political. So there's kind of the societal norms and rules, the things that make up
mm.
culturally, what the polity, what the group of citizens think is acceptable behavior, and acceptable in terms of encroaching on one another's rights and
Mm.
freedoms. There's that type of politics, I find. So the interpersonal, intergroup, community versus community, that type of politics. And then there's the governance side of politics. So what's the government doing? What's it doing for me? What type of decisions are making? So like politics is broad. It's a really, really broad spectrum, and people will call those types of things political because they are, I would, I would suggest,
Mm.
difficult conversations for the most part, because they seem to require people to take a position on things that affect not only themselves but other people. And so once you
Yes.
start to have an opinion on things that affect others, then you have to have I would argue, most people expect a justifiable position if you're going
Mm.
to encroach on somebody else's liberties, uh, or their civil rights, their even unalienable rights, things that they've come to expect from the civilization, the society that they're living in. So if you're going to make a decision that's going to impact on people, people tend to stay away from that stuff where possible. And that's why people get a bit edgy when, like, you're, as you've described, doing something fun, entertaining, or enjoying a
Mm.
pastime, and someone politicizes it somehow or brings up politics, whatever that means, and then like you have to get all serious.
Yeah, but like, I guess the reason why I found it very interesting that the broader interpretation was brought into this is whenever I do think of that persona, they're like, why are you making this political? So let's, for argument's sake, call that persona the apolitical person.
Mm,
So the person that's like, hey, I just kind of want to live my life. Why are you turning this into a thing? Because that's effectively what that persona doesn't want. It's like, hey, I just want to do my thing. You keep your politics out of this. And I think it's worth asking the clarifying question. Well, does does politics affect you, or does your action or inaction in this case does it affect you? Because I think a lot of people think when they think of politics or they think of issues that involve politics, you have somebody that's for an issue, there's somebody that's against an issue, but not a lot of people think about how inaction or abstaining from the issue,
mm,
it's kind of a political act within itself.
right, right.
Because and I think more broadly, it's a lot of people tend to think of being proactive or an action as an act, but I kind of feel like inaction is just as important. So I
Yeah, if it's done consciously,
yes, but
I think
I
there's
guess
there's a distinction there.
yes, but I think where I'm kind of going with this is that, look, with this broader definition of, everything is political, um, obviously there's limits of that. Like, for example, drinking some water, you probably uh, can't be very political about that, because you need that to subsist, you need that to survive. And obviously the other side of this spectrum is if somebody says, well, I believe that everyone should have access to water, we're therefore talking about human rights. um, uh, you're talking about human rights, so it's very obvious that you're talking about something political. But I guess if you abstain from that conversation, I think what people tend to forget is that that is an action within itself,
Yes.
and you are being political, and I don't think a lot of people think about that.
Mm. But like I would say that if they're doing it consciously, they're being political. And if they are not doing it consciously, they're being apolitical. So the realm
Right.
of politics is full of people that do abstain from an issue. But that's a political statement when done consciously. If you
Mm.
choose not to be involved in a decision-making process because you abstain from it, that is political action as potentially powerful as voting yay or nay,
Mm.
because you're showing that you're staying out of it, and that is consciously a decision made. Now, if somebody's apolitical, as in they aren't interested in politics from the get-go, and they are abstaining through ignorance almost,
Mm.
so that's a very different thing, I would argue. And I would say that level of indifference is a matter for concern, depending on the stakes of the conversation you're having. So if you're talking about, like, can you politicize someone drinking water? Well, then someone could come up to you and just be like, oh, no, and knock the water out of your hand and say, they put fluoride in your water. And then you'll be like, oh, okay. And what's the problem with that? And then they'll be like, tell you why the government really did it. And there was an excess surplus of fluoride after World War II. So they pumped it full of our drinking water and then told us all it's good for our teeth. But there's side effects of it that no one's considered. That is politicizing water. If you
Well,
get it, if
yes.
you get it out of the tap, and you live in a country where they put fluoride in the water, or they try to make sure it's met to a certain cleanliness standard, and they put a bit of chlorine in it to kill germs and all that sort of stuff, or bacteria. That's very quickly the politicization of water. Or you get it from some exclusive waterfall in some Pacific island somewhere. They bottle it up so everybody can enjoy the minerals of this island water. But at the same time, they're exploiting island workers and underpaying them and not giving them enough money for the effort they go through to extract said water from these pristine waterfalls. Like, you can
Yeah.
politicize anything, but like, what's the gravity of the conversation at hand? So if people are just like ignorant to it and they're just like, oh man, I don't want to hear about that. I just want to enjoy my water. Like, are there ramifications for that decision of being ignorant? Probably
Well,
not. I don't know. Maybe there are. So like, you have to
yeah.
kind of ask the question, is the indifference justifiable?
Yes, but also just kind of, I guess, you riffing off the example that I used, like in that essence of you reframing the statement, uh, you were, I guess, I started with an individual act,
Hmm.
um, an individual act of drinking water, but in the process of that second person coming in and being like, "Hey, did you know X, Y, Z?" That was, well, that was a call to action, or at least a call for concern. Like
Yes.
the second person was trying to collectivize, or at least trying to inform the person that, hey, maybe you should check your behavior,
Hmm.
or this is the realm of, I guess, moralizing, or at least stating your values, as the original definition was saying. It that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody was showing their um, I guess their political ideology or anything. It was more like, hey, this what are you sure that this water is safe or not? And it was calling on others to at least either question what was happening. So it was like, I guess, as soon as you try to involve other people, I think it's inevitable that you're dealing with interpersonal relationships, and uh, politics kind of ensues.
Yes. Yeah. Like, look at friendship groups, look at families, communities, workplaces,
Mm.
where you have people integrating with one another with an objective, maybe even without an objective. Maybe it's just to enjoy each other's company, like friend groups. These things are riddled with politics. And in those
Mm.
um, circumstances, they're more along the lines of the personal relationships themselves and whether or not they're meeting expectations and standards. And like, people get on each other's nerves. People cross lines. People do things that are potentially considered unacceptable decorum. And then the discussion that ensues and the actions that are taken following are considered to be the politics of the group, the politics of the relationship, the politics of being in association with other humans. So really politics is fundamentally the sorting out of relationships when you have groups of people.
Yeah, and like that's a really good point, because really when it comes down to it, like I guess since I've put the World Cup in my brain, um the first thing that comes to mind is let's take
Don't say the thing. Don't say the. Are you using the medal,
oh,
the recent medal?
no,
Ah, okay.
I
Because that's
actually was
politicizing. That's politicizing soccer to the max, right?
well, I wasn't going to, but you do raise a really good point. The head of FIFA was good mates with Trump, and the world game gets the biggest reach. Look, I wasn't gonna go in this direction, but you have a point.
That's
Yeah,
politicizing soccer,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. So he was like, obviously, it's the world game.
Yeah, please explain for the viewers, please.
Okay. So, just if people aren't up to date with their politics, I can't for the life of me remember the name of the FIFA boss, but of course he's the president of FIFA. He's really good mates with Donald J. Trump, and Trump didn't get the Nobel Peace Prize, but instead, what this head of FIFA did was he decided to create the FIFA Peace Prize, and the FIFA Peace Prize, and he decided to award it to his good friend Donald Trump. And the funny thing is that look, I'm sure there's a lot of people who watch the world game. It's a game that's played throughout every single country in the world, and I'm sure there's just as many political people as well as apolitical people um, that watch soccer or football in a majority of the world. And, here Donald J. Trump was the president of America, receiving the first ever FIFA Peace Prize for everything that he was helping out in the Ukraine, stopping that. And what was it, what was it, the eight conflicts
There's
that
8
apparently
conflicts
Trump
around
has stopped?
That's right.
Yeah, 8 conflicts. And so, the FIFA boss put it upon himself to personally congratulate on behalf of the FIFA and the world game community, to offer his good friend a peace prize. So something that, I would say, I would say is largely a lot of people would consider playing sport to be an apolitical thing, suddenly, without anyone else's control, got turned into a political thing.
It's been
I
politicized,
guess
baby.
yes. And like, I guess the direction I was going to go is just to add a second example is I've used the English Premier League before, that look, even within the clubs, there's various politics that happen that, people wouldn't consider normal politics. Like, I'm sure people normally think about their main political parties when they think of politics. But, politics happens in these sort of organizations as well. Like, look at your established clubs like Manchester United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, and all of that. If they're not at least coming in second, or they're in the top 4 spots, they're in a Champions League spot, it's considered an absolute disaster. And it's most likely at the end of the season, if you're not in that top 4 spot, the manager's probably going to get sacked.
Mm.
Whereas you go to, like, say, another club, say something like a Southampton or say Wolverhampton Wanderers or something like that, like a team that kind of jumps between the Championship, which is the second division league, and the Premier League, like them going up and down between the leagues, because football has relegation as well as promotion system. Um, them surviving a season or just existing in the Premier League, that's probably considered a success. Though naturally, if they get relegated, that's also a political scenario where, oh, hey, manager Joe Block, you're probably going to get sacked in the morning since you got relegated from the Premier League. We just lost a whole bunch of money.
Mm.
So, and actually, and people even say when talking about the world game, it's a results based sport. You either do well or you don't, and
Mm.
the results mean you do well. If you fail, you're out of here.
Yeah.
So you can claim that those are political statements as well.
Mm. Mm.
So yes, I completely forgot about the Peace Prize. So thank you for reminding me of that
Yeah,
one,
well, it's interesting because it's a
Myster E.
politicization of like sport, which is reserved for entertainment purposes and a spectacle of skill and human achievement, physical human achievement and talent. It's a showcase of all of those things, and those things are separate, supposedly, to politics, which is as we were discussing before, the relations between persons and the sorting out of the relations between persons,
Mm.
typically in relation to power structures, typically, but not always. It's just kind of sorting out standards, as we were describing. Like, even like sport is full of political decisions. Anyone who has any love for a sporting team within within a certain competition would know that competitions themselves, to be able to maintain themselves as a viable competition, will sometimes promote certain teams or certain players because they have the right
Mm.
story or the right narrative that supports the growth of the game generally, or the growth of the competition. And so they will promote certain clubs, promote certain people, and like even help them out potentially, do things that are untoward, give them favors, give them special breaks and concessions, in order to serve a grander agenda. And that is usually considered to be like the politics of the game itself, right? Because it's not just about
Mm.
the sport. It's not just about just allowing it to freely sort itself out on the field or in the arena. There's all this stuff that goes on behind closed doors, in order to present a particular story, a particular picture, and develop
Mm.
the entire industry. And so there's politics in that sense. And so, like, if we go back to where we kind of all started, like, what does politics even mean? And like, I guess the conversation around, can you truly be apolitical? Like, can you be indifferent to politics? I guess you could
Mm.
be indifferent to how your country is run or how your government operates. You could be potentially indifferent to wanting to engage in difficult discussions with people about what are cultural norms or what are acceptable standards in any given situation. But like, if you think you can be void of all human relations altogether, which like politics seems to come with human relations and the sorting out of human relations, then I don't think you can really be apolitical totally. You will eventually have an opinion on something to do with any of the relationships you're potentially involved in. So politics isn't just like confined to the realm of governance and setting cultural standards and expectations and discussions about cultural norms. It's not just limited to those areas of life. And so, like, most people would be therefore political without even knowing it, because they will get involved in discussions or have opinions and thoughts, and get passionate or angry, or elated by certain things that unfold with political
Mm.
ramifications. And so, like, I would, again say that, if people are being apolitical, um, that I think for the most part, people are choosing consciously to abstain from things, if they don't want to talk about something, because it is difficult. It is difficult, and like you were saying before, that is a choice, and that can be a statement within itself. But like, I don't think you can escape
Yes,
politics
but
as humans.
no, you really can't. And to be honest, there are there are ways in our society as well that you can't just completely opt out. Like, for example, just to kind of use the concept within a vacuum, but you can't get into your car and go well above the speed limit, racing down the highway, and then a police car pulls you over and uh, they said, "Hey, did you know you were speeding?" It's not like you can turn around to the police officer and say, "Oh yeah, sorry, I didn't know the speed limit around here. I thought it was this. Turns out it was this. Sorry." Like, look, sure, it's we're talking about discretion here. Like, I'm sure the police officer could let you off with a warning, but just as much they'll probably slap a fine, or if you're being extra rowdy, probably throw you in prison for the night.
Mm. Mm.
Like, your ignorance doesn't um, remove you from the law.
Mm.
Just to kind of give an example, like,
Mm.
there's only so much you can opt out within a
Yes.
society,
Yes.
which
Yes.
is my point.
Yeah. And like to continue with that idea, you might be politically opposed to having to travel at 50 or 60, and you might think that your government is encroaching on your goddamn rights as a free individual to drive down at 70 or 80, and they've reduced the speed limit on this street. Outrageous. And so, like, if you choose as a political statement to still drive at 70 or 80 because you think it's a ridiculous governance decision and you didn't vote for this shit, then you're taking it into your own hands by deciding to drive beyond the legal limit. And then if you get caught for that, that was a political statement, but it has ramifications. And so politics
Mm.
is kind of just there. It's an inbuilt feature of human organization, and human organization on a society-wide level now is very, very complex. We live in capitalistic societies now, so the division of labor that goes into society, so the amount and variations of things that everybody does in order to make the entire society function is so varied. Like, if we were living in the Middle Ages, it'd be much
Mm.
easier to kind of decide, you could probably list everything that everybody does in that society. There's a peasant or a serf class, there's a warrior class, there's a priesthood, like a religious class, there's the nobility, there's maybe a monarch. You could list kind of the different segments of society, the divisions of labor that continue that society going on. Good luck today defining all of the different roles, responsibilities, and functions people have in a vast,
Mm.
complex, advanced industrial society. There's just too many functions out there, too many roles. And so with that broad scale diversification of human activity and function, like, the politics is just complex, and it's just everywhere, like from driving down the street to choosing who's going to be in charge for the next in like next 4 years or indefinite period. That's there's politics in all of that. And like I said, as the complexity of the division of labor increases, Like there's just so much room for politics in all of that, whether you choose to actually, integrate into the economy and like start a business or get a job, or be, a soccer player or something like that with your life. There's politics kind of in all of those things. And so, yeah, you can't escape it. But like, if it comes down, if we use politics in more of the traditional general sense that people do talk about, like politics, hey, these are
Mm.
politicians, right? That's what I think people would usually define as politics. Now, there's politics in
Yeah.
everything, but politics is reserved for politicians and what people describe like as governments. So the ordering of society around a state, and the state provides kind of provisions and services that are not done or provided for in the market, in the free market. And so the state is the bureaucratic institution that provides all of the backbone for society, its rules, its regulations, functions, and services that are not provided on the market or by freely associated organizations. And so that's politics, right? And so
Yes.
people have a say in politics because politics is governance, and governance is the organization of society outside of the market. The market sorts things out and the government sorts things out. I'm just talking about, general liberal
Yeah.
democratic societies here. Now, in our day and age, I would say that politics, does it affect you? Is it important? Should you be political? I would argue that it's imperative for the advancement of the human race to be political. It's just fundamental to modernity. Now,
Yeah.
where
And
we where we
yeah.
came from in a
Yeah.
feudal society and in societies before that, ancient societies, there were definite class structures. Now, when I say definite class structures,
Mm.
that comes with birthright. So there were certain distinctions between people based on birthright. So you were either
Yeah.
born into the right class and you were allowed to be political, you were invested in the politics, the governance of your society, or you were born in another class, typically an underclass, and you were completely excluded from the political system because of how you were born or where you were born, into what family you were born
Mm.
into. You were excluded, explicitly excluded from any form of political activity. Now, the modern society, for the most part, not everywhere, but has been based on an experiment or a dream that all people are born equal. So there's no longer the ingrained class society by birthright. And with that station, at a certain point in your life, usually in adulthood these days, you have the ability to not only partake in the political organization of your society, so you can become politically active, but you can freely
Mm.
talk about it. Because the other function in those class societies were if you tried to get political and you weren't in the right class, they could kill you for that. Like they probably
Yeah.
lock you up or beat you up or rough you up or scare you into not doing it again. But if they really wanted to, they'd kill you for being political. Now, this is
Yeah.
a weird time in human history, civilizational human history, where we can be political technically and like not have to look over our
Mm.
shoulders. Now, that's not ubiquitous. There are still many countries in the world where if you get a little bit political, you may disappear. But like I think it's worth
Mm.
acknowledging that if we are apolitical, so we're purposely indifferent to politics, then that I would say privilege, because like it should be a human right. Don't get me wrong, political expression and political
Mm.
participation, but like it's never really a right. They could take it away at any time if they really wanted to, and so like being indifferent, being apolitical, is a dangerous game if you ask me. Holistically,
Yeah. I guess probably the one thing that I would add to it as well, like if I was speaking to that persona, person to person, and They don't even see the point uh, of all that politics stuff, if you will. Um, the one thing I would try to impress upon them is that, okay, like, you can, rather than act, you can just can show inaction if you really want to. But the fact of the matter is in the act of you being apolitical, in you not, I guess, fighting for your rights, or at least trying to change things for a better society in whatever way, shape, or form you view that. In the place of you not doing anything, there is, you know, there's somebody else who's more than willing to push their agenda, or to push what they see as a better society. And hey, for all you know, that's not in your best interests. Hell, it's mightn't even be for a majority of people's interests, but you've made the choice of being inactive, showing inaction, which whether that's a political statement within itself, or the game of politics is, so confusing, it's so boring that you're like, I'm completely checked out, who cares? Like, hey, maybe the reason why it functions that way is somebody doesn't want you to put in your voice. Have you ever thought about that? So yeah.
Well, it's like comparable, and we have this discussion in streams all the time because we have an international audience, and I know there's differences in opinions on this one, but like in a country like Australia with mandatory voting compared to like pretty much everywhere else, like we are required at some point to at least participate politically. And so like you can't be apolitical, because even if you rock up and abstain, you're still making a political statement. So in a country like Australia, everyone is forced to have a political position or make a political statement at some point in their adult life on a regular basis. Like on a 4-yearly cycle, let's say.
Yeah, because like I guess at worst, or well, okay, I won't make it pejorative. At the very least, at the very least, what happens is, I don't know, say you donkey vote, or say you do a massive X on your voting sheet and you throw it into the small paper and the big paper bins, and at the very least, what happens is you become a statistic in the informal, statistic within that polling booth, and then that's it. Everyone else within your electorate has decided is going to be either the PM who was sitting there, or whoever the new politician is. So you've whether that's because you don't understand the system, or whether you think it's complete rubbish and you've decided to opt out of it. You're still supposed to turn up.
You're participating. You're participating.
Yeah.
And I think participation is important. I don't think democracy technically works without participation, because it is supposed to be a rule by the people. And whatever the people are, who knows, usually it's defined a level of citizenship status and a certain level of ability to responsibly partake in society's function. So usually you're an adult. And you've got you've got function, you've got duty, you've got responsibility at a certain point in life. And so I think participation in a democratic, so if you really want to have an organized structure of politics that is ruled by the people, then participation is important. And that is my argument against places that don't have mandatory voting, is that, as you were implying before, there is an inbuilt, I believe, feature in a capitalistic society. And so we live in that type of economy. We live in a bourgeois society, as I would describe it. And we have something that I would describe as a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, or a bourgeois dictatorship. So we technically have the rule of the economy by the people that own the means of producing value. So they own, significant parts of the economy, and that owning of the economy gives them political power, gives them the power to make the real choices. And so, voting and participating in the system is really a very tokenistic way of saying everybody, is involved. It's a, democracy. People are making a choice, but we're really choosing from people that have been vetted in some way, whether they're from the bourgeoisie themselves or they've been vetted by the bourgeoisie through bourgeois political parties. And they're there because they're acceptable choices for the bourgeois, the people that really run the economy and society. But I would like as you were insinuating before, they probably, if they had the choice, they would want less people involved in that system than more, because the more people that do get involved in the system, there are opportunities in that style of system for the bourgeois class, the people that really control the economy and thus society, for them to lose power in that system. There can be people that can, form their own parties, agitate within the system and gain political support, and then use that political support to make changes in the system that derive or draw power away from the bourgeois and their economic power. So I agree with your sentiment before that there is probably systematic and inbuilt into this style of economy a degradation, an inherent degradation of the idea that politics is important, and even as far as to be this kind of propagandistic, this indoctrinated view that politics is boring as well. And so, do you really want to waste your time voting? Don't worry about it. Just, sit at home, watch the soccer, have a beer, take your pants off, relax. You know what I mean? And that is kind of something that's instilled. And that's why I would argue for mandatory voting and against voluntary voting, because the system, I do believe, is, to a large part, it does kind of instill apathy in the voting population. And there's a general sense that it's all pointless among the voting masses, even though it is a democracy, and by virtue it is ruled by the people, and so they should be involved in political decision making, even though they're not directly involved, because it's just through representation usually. So they don't make political decisions. They just get together in a popularity contest every few years or whatever to decide who's going to represent them. And they're not really involved in the decision making as such. They just have the smokescreen of selecting the persons that are there. I think mandatory voting is more conducive to the objective or the ideal of democracy. And if democracy is the embodiment of the modern experiment, which is, hey, we don't live in a defined class society with birthright political status anymore, then democracy is as close as you're going to get to people being able to habitually and, on a schedule, being politically active. And it is the thing, that action, that political action, being politically active or being forced to be politically active, that holds together remnants of people having political discussions as well. Because whether people are actually political or not, when it gets close to an election cycle, almost everyone has an opinion. And if they really hate what's going on, as you've described, and they're so off-put by it, they'll just draw a dick on the ballot paper or an X or something, as you described before. But that in itself, they've probably listened to everyone talking. They're just like, all of these guys are idiots. I don't want to be part of this, so I'm going to abstain from voting. And so, it forces the political participation that is the experiment with a society where people can be involved in politics. Now, I think if we're going to advance as a species beyond this level of civilization and go to another one that has a different form of political organization and economy, we need people politically conscious. We don't want them indifferent,
Mm.
I would argue. We don't want people to get used to the idea again that they shouldn't participate in politics. I think that is unfortunately that would be us regressing as a species. I think.
Yes, and I probably the one thing I will add, at least when you were talking about uh, mandatory voting versus voluntary voting, is there's also an extra step of where we're quite kind of unique here in Australia. Is well, not only do we have mandatory voting, but we also have ranked voting, which is really good. Like, it's not first past the post here in Australia.
Mm.
It's you you're forced to go in on the day, or I don't know, maybe you've done a little bit of research before you've gone in, of who do you think supports your values and whatnot. But then not only that, it's okay, it's great that there's somebody that you like, but then you also have to consider, okay, what is the second best person, who's the third best person, all the way down to the eighth candidate, the person that you definitely don't want to be on the back, to get your vote. And um, what's great about the system is, okay, the first candidate that you wanted, say they didn't get enough votes, that gets struck off on your voting card. You get to the second person. Oh, they didn't seem to get enough votes. That's struck off. And it just so happens that the person who's remained in the race is your third choice, and that, with a whole bunch of other people's, I guess, primary votes, if you will, their first votes, that gets that candidate over the line, and it's much more. There's much more of a chance that there's a collective agreement that that MP should represent the people, or at least that's the running idea of ranked voting. So it's not just who who got the most first votes, and like the rest of the ones aren't really considered, or they can be thrown out. But like, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but at least in the system, the premise of it is that it's supposed to be fairer, because at least somewhere along your votes, you are going to be considered.
Mm.
So yeah, like I that's the one tidbit I'd probably add to yours, is that there's the extra device of you need to be political even if it's on that day.
Yeah, yeah. And the preference system
Yeah.
is good. Like, it gives people options. It's not just like yes or no. It's not like a binary option. Like, you actually have to choose from multiple. And then so like your second order or third order, your choices on ranking people does matter as well. So it's not just a popularity contest and who's your favorite. It's like, who do you think in order of best to worst is appropriate, and like your vote goes further in that circumstance, and so your participation actually balances out over a longer period. Almost, it can be counted for more, and it goes a little bit further than just your traditional form of voting, like your first past the post kind of system, as you've described. But like, I think it's incredibly important, whatever your way of figuring out democracy, again, in the meaning of that word being, ruled by the people, whoever that constitutes, whatever that group is. They're the ones that they have enfranchisement, let's say, they're allowed to vote. I think it is really important to uphold the value of voting, of political participation and political expression. Because I think if you take away one, then you will inherently take away the other. So there's something that we've spoken a lot about this year is the idea of the dark enlightenment. And so just to catch people
Yeah.
up to speed, the dark enlightenment is this idea that the liberal project, the idea of democratic societies in a liberal sense, uh, it got it wrong. The Enlightenment was wrong. These ideas that people are equal are wrong, and people have rights to participate in society are wrong. It's wrong to a certain extent that the hierarchy is justified, and supreme executive power given to someone like a monarch or a king is actually a better way of organizing society. And so the Dark Enlightenment is kind of the rejection of political participation in the system. And we should move back to a system of societal structure where you kind of have all decisions centralized in an executive, or power
Mm.
centralized in an executive figure who has the final call, like a corporate structure. You have the CEO
Mm.
who makes the final call. Now, you could have power and politics going on at all different levels, but at the end of the day, if one various part of the governance structure or the political apparatus is not working and it's like not delivering, then you can have this person, this monarch, this executive come in and make the final call. And as the person that
Mm.
kind of it supposedly has everyone's interest at hand, just because they were chosen, I don't know, by God or some other selection process somehow, they should be able to use understand what the collective vision is, like a philosopher king, as you like to say, for us, the collective
Yeah.
vision of everybody in society, everyone's collective good, collective will, and make the right call, the call that needs to be made, and the call that can't always be made in a system where everybody is politically active, technically, because it's like sometimes it's just inefficient having everybody able to have an impact. Now, that is a serious conversation that is happening. Like,
Mm.
most people, I would say, have grown up with the idea of democracy and freedom somehow being interchangeable terms, inextricable terms. You can't have freedom without democracy. And all of a sudden, we are facing, as a civilization, this idea that maybe democracy wasn't as cracked up to be as it is not as good as it was cracked up to be. And we have been lied to almost. And there is a reactionary force out there against the idea of everybody participating. Now, my point in saying all of this is that if that is the case, and these people take primacy, and like the argument is we don't actually need democracy, we need something more like a king, a monarchy, or a CEO style structure to govern society, because that is more efficient. Don't think that just because they've decided that this is the most efficient form of organizing, and it's just about organization. Don't think for a second that if they take away your ability to politically participate in society, you'll still be able to have the political expression, and you'll be able to criticize the CEO or criticize the king or criticize the power
Mm.
structure. I would say that those two things reinforce one another, and actually, if you are politically participating, then you have the ability to protect your right to political expression. But if you take away the political participation, be prepared to remove the political expression, ultimately. And we will revert to a system again where if you just don't like what's going on and you say that out loud, you can be thrown in prison or something like that. That is not
Mm.
the society and the political experiment, the civilizational structure that we have fabricated together as a collective body, as a sovereign citizenship. That wasn't the social contract last time I checked 4AS. If we are going to give
No.
sovereignty to the state to have certain powers over us, we should be able to say whether or not we fucking like it or not. We should be able to say, no, this is bullshit and I don't like it. But I
Well,
don't see the two, if one goes, I don't see the other one lasting. And that's scary.
well, yes, and I guess something has definitely gone terribly wrong if we develop into a divine rights, the divine right of CEOs.
Yeah,
If
mentality. Yeah, it's
if
crazy.
we go in that direction,
It is. It's crazy.
yeah, and to be completely honest, I would say, well, personally, if people feel disenfranchised, at least with currently how the way things have occurred within liberal democratic societies, it's not necessarily that we should throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of the democracy experiment, because I guess post World War II, that this is basically what that is. We we fought against autocratic regimes in order to establish this democratic order, if you will. Even though if it's controlled for a certain group of people, if you will.
It's illusory.
But if I don't think the answer is to completely throw everything out. I think the answer is for the experiment to evolve. It's.
Yes.
I thought this was the classic science thing. If an experiment doesn't go well, you don't do one experiment and then you're like, oh, okay, well, that didn't work. Let me completely throw my hypothesis out.
Yeah, let's never do that again.
Try and you try again. Yeah, exactly. Like you don't completely throw something out. You try and you try again.
Yeah,
and hey, even in those, I guess in that idealized or even that idealized world of that science experiment, hey, you try 100 times, you try 200 times, and eventually you come to something interesting that you didn't anticipate before.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you might have gotten some of what you thought was going to happen, and then some of what you didn't know what was going to happen. And you record those results, and that's that. Yeah, I guess what the point of that analogy was, yes, to link it back to the persona we put in place of the person who wants to show inaction rather than action, or wants to be apolitical rather than political. Again, hey, if you, it's if you want to not participate in society because you don't see the point of it, fine, that is your opinion. But whether you'll get the same luxury under the dark enlightenment, that's an entirely different story. If things don't go in the direction you want to.
I think it's worth holding on to what we've got as long as possible. And I think, to be honest, if you really want to degrade something, okay, fine. The system of politics we have is imperfect. I think it's easy to make that argument. But the idea of political expression, though, being able to speak about how society is organized, and that freedom to do so, to have an opinion and to voice it, not only to voice it, but to get together with other people, assemble and express it. If those things if that ever goes away, we're back in the dark ages, as far as I'm concerned. It's not just dark enlightenment. Like, we just need a new way of organizing the political structure to make it more efficient. That is like dark ages. That is like we have lost something fundamental to the way that we should be considering ourselves as social creatures, how we relate to one another. And we can't talk politics anymore by fear of some type of repression or reprisal or something like that. Like if we are silenced in terms of political expression, I think it's all over for us, and we might not be able to get that stuff back for a long time.
Yeah, it's just, look, this is going to be a complete tangent, but like when we've been talking about just then about the Dark Enlightenment, my mind was kind of going into the whole thing with, Peter Thiel and Palantir and the relationship of, Palantir's being the evil object that Sauron controlled and everything. And I just thought, like, I guess whether it's the tech bros, whether it's the the capitalists in terms of being in that world, and you know whoever these people are that come up with the concepts like Dark Enlightenment, Palantir, and stuff like that. Like, do they not have a marketing team? Like, who thought it was a good idea to be like, hey, these evil concepts throughout literature or whatever I'm talking about. Let me make this concept as evil as possible and then put it out into the world. That sounds like a great idea.
I think
I don't quite understand. Sorry, you were going to say.
I was just going to say I don't think they care. Actually, I think they think it's quite clever. Actually, I would put it to you for us.
Right. So the fact that they've made it so evil is the point.
They're leaning into it.
Okay.
Edgelords, bro. Edgelords.
Oh, right. What was it? When you saying was it dark goth MAGA?
There's dark. There's different types of dark enlightenment theory, and there's there's the dark gothic MAGA, which is a form of MAGA which is overtly dark enlightenment. And so Elon Musk described himself as dark gothic MAGA. So he wasn't just the red MAGA, he was dark gothic. And the Silicon Valley people are guided by the philosophy of the dark enlightenment, which preaches this idea of the CEO king and the end of democracy, because they have cultivated the culture of the startup and the genius CEO, who's now a billionaire and the head of one of the most important sections of the global bourgeoisie now. And that's the people who control the world. And so they don't want this pretense of democracy. They don't want this pretense of people power or people rule. They want to make it official that the society really is run by a corporate style structure, and they want to make that official.
Okay, no, thank you for giving that recap, because I completely went off on a tangent. So, hey, by all means, listeners and viewers, if you found what Myster E was talking about if you found that interesting, I'm sure later down the track we can definitely do a podcast on it, because that is fascinating stuff.
It is.
But with that, it does bring us to our final segment. What's that synthwave art? So what do you think was the prompt for this one, Myster E?
Well, it's obviously two people being very political and making a political statement. Is it two homosexual people holding hands and walking into the sunset because that was a political issue about gay marriage and all that sort of stuff? Is that what it is? Or politicizing marriage? Is that what it is?
That I could see why you've gone in that direction, but the actual prompt was being political in an apolitical world to bring forth a bright future for everyone. You're kind of there. Obviously you've gone understandably specific, but I didn't actually think about that until you put it into my head. Yeah, because it looks like, well, quite frankly, I think you're right. It looks like you have a mask lesbian and a femme lesbian holding hands walking down into the sunset. Like, yeah, I didn't think about that because,
Well,
like, I guess the figure on the left looks very feminine as well.
yeah,
So
they both do. And like I just remember at the time of like in Australia anyway, when we had the referendum. No, it wasn't a referendum. It was a plebiscite
no, it was a
on
plebiscite.
yes,
Plebiscite.
on gay marriage. People were like, "Why are we politicizing marriage?" And I remember that coming up as a topic of conversation. And I was like, "Wow, this is how whether or not we decide of what's acceptable. These are societal standards now. These are laws. Um, these are changes to our fabric, our culture. It's all political, baby. I don't understand the question. I
Well,
remember thinking that
I
at the
was about,
time.
to,
You know,
yeah. Well, I find that fascinating because the whole idea of marriage was could only between a man and a woman was a political statement within
it's
itself.
a statement. It's a form of politics,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, exactly. So the fact that people were saying, "Oh, why are we bringing politics into it?"
Mm.
I think somebody can very easily say, "Yeah, but that statement of between a man and a woman is political."
It's political. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, tangent again. And if you did like this episode, remember to like, share, and subscribe. And remember to keep thinking and keep learning. And to pass it off, I'll give it to you, Myster E, to sign
Thank
us
you very
off.
much for us. Appreciate it. And to all of you out there, please remember, I am, you are, we are a mystery.